Right. Hi, Stu. This is Dreadnought
Hello.
News Podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, I'm going better than poor old Peter Dutton is though. He's had a bit of a crash in the polls, and he's not feeling too good about himself at the moment. I don't think.
No, I'd be interested to know what's causing it. The I can't think of anything off the top of my head, to be honest. I know that they had a bit of traction in the news cycle with that visitor, a donor on his way up to Queensland ahead of the not cyclone. Um,
Which yeah, was nothing. It was a nothing burger.
yeah, but then it turned out that Albo had done the exact same thing. Though I know that the ABC took 3 weeks to report that the same day that Dutton was seeing a donor, Albo was too. Um, but
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
also at a loss to explain it. Like, I mean, the consensus wisdom is, Trump is causing, so much like negativity, and so there's been a swing towards the left, because Trump is against Zelensky, and
who's saying
Zelensky is
that?
this is the consensus. This is what is the vibe in the media is like, could because Trump is like opposed to Zelensky, and Zelensky is literally Churchill reincarnated. That means that there's a swing back towards the left because and so like we've been saying, it's
I swear to God, man, like if I was the Prime Minister of Australia, I would make it a hanging offence for a journalist to refer to any events between 1917 and 1951. Your World War II privileges are cut off. You're not allowed to talk about it anymore.
sorry for that siren, by
Um,
the way. I live across the road from Marrickville Fire Station, so but I put it down to like we've been talking about. It's boomer brain, and this is what my boomer. Can you see my screen, by the way?
yeah,
This is what my boomer uncle. He's a I mean, he's an intelligent guy, but he's a died in the wool lefty and like a EV fanatic. And so this is the kind of basically propaganda that he's been sharing on social media. So Labor promised, Labor delivered. Inflation reduced.
no rorting, no corruption. That's
We ha-
and I think almost everything there is just an outright lie, like
I
an
know, but
outright
then
lie.
but then look at did you see that this is the funniest thing here? When you think about it, Alpo and the team have done a really good job. And so I don't know if this is like if this is cutting through. I had to comment on it. I had to say, in the interest of being balanced, one might point out that the Albanese Labor government has admitted well over 1 million new immigrants in its first term. And so, I'm married to an immigrant. I'm in favor of a reasonable and balanced immigration program, but dumping such
Oh
a
yeah,
large
but
influx of newcomers on Australia in such a short time period has caused an intractable housing crisis and the longest decline in real wages for Australian workers on record. And it's just
yeah,
common sense,
I
right?
no.
Massive levels of immigration suppress workers' wages. Labor used to acknowledge this. But now they've turned their back on their traditional base in
Mm.
favor of, the big companies like Woolworths, everything like that, who profit from wage suppression. The new immigrants they dumped on society. Exhibit A for that is Tony Burke's mass citizenship
It's
ceremony
outrageous.
with the AEC like literally there to sign them all up as soon as they
Mm.
get their new citizenship and their own property portfolios. Exhibit B, which is Albo's $4 million clifftop mansion, which is coincidentally the road that is on has been earmarked for a several $100 million upgrade with federal taxpayer funds, which goes back to this issue here of no rorting, no corruption. Yet, because the leftist media doesn't report on it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Anyway,
Oh well, yeah, and I mean he gave $2 billion to keep the suburban rail loop going, and here in Melbourne, Jacinta Allen is having a whale of a time. with CFMEU rorting.
Yeah, what
I
I'm not up to date on that story. So you mentioned it this morning. So I mean,
oh
yeah.
really? Oh, okay. So yeah, if you look at the age has come out. So there was a report on 60 Minutes on Sunday night, where like CFMEU bikies, the CFMEU has been infiltrated by bikies. Bikies are running an extortion racket at all of the big build sites. So that's not one infrastructure project. It's several. So it's the Northeast Link, which fuck knows how much that thing costs. It's the new rail tunnel. So there's a rail tunnel that's going to go underground. I think it goes underground at South Yarra and comes back above ground in Parkville. And the idea is to take two of the lines. So there's a loop that goes around the city that has 5 stations on it. That loop is at capacity, so no more trains can get rammed through that. So the idea of this tunnel is to take two of the lines off the loop, so that way the other lines can have more trains to go through the loop, and these two can have more trains that will go through their own tunnel. But I mean, that's 5 years over date and at least 10 billion over budget. And the common factor at all of these sites is a big stinking CFMEU flag hanging over all of it.
Right.
So yeah, they've got like images of like the health and safety director of the CFMEU like kicking the shit out of some female employee. Um, yeah, as bad as that is, as bad as that is, the real scandal here is we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars rorted from the Victorian taxpayer. Like the expected value of the SRL, like they went, oh, we're going to do it for 50 billion. Then it came back right after the election. Sorry, it looks like it's going to be more like 200 billion. And it's going to get delivered. It's targeted to be delivered sometime in 2060. So fuck knows what will actually get paid for it. It'll be more than 200 billion. And every single one of their infrastructure projects are like this. So they don't overrun by 200 or 300 million. They overrun by hundreds of billions of dollars. And uh, it's all bullshit. So the bikies have been lodging ghost shifts. So like the what will happen is so at Northeast Link, they had some dude who got a job which required his attendance at site once a week, for which he was getting paid $5,000 a week. And it isn't one or two. Like it's thousands of people are getting paid on this, and like I can't remember what they are trying everything in the book to try and balance the budget. But one thing they won't do is cut these infrastructure projects. Now, Albo tipped 2 billion into the suburban rail loop. It went straight into the coffers of the CFMEU from the CFMEU back to the Labor Party. So no rorts, no corruption. No, he just did rorts and corruption not even 3 weeks ago to the
Mm.
tune of $2 billion. He doesn't do a little bit of rorts and corruption. It's not like a bottle of wine, which would sink a premier in New South Wales. It's billions of dollars. And in Victoria, they're introducing land taxes and like everything that's got a fee associated with it has gone up. I can't remember what it went. So probate went from something like an order of probate went from something like $300 to like $10,000 or something like that in the last year. So they've introduced an estate tax. It's an estate tax because obviously an order for probate doesn't cost $300 to produce, doesn't cost $10,000 to produce. So yeah, it's the Victorian government is much more corrupt than the Bjelke Peterson government ever was, ever was. And it's absolutely impervious to scrutiny. So that we've got IBAC, which is a bit like ICAC, and I've got problems with those broad-based anti-corruption things, um, because
They invariably lean to the left. Invariably.
yeah, and they have a bit of a problem with presumption of innocence. Realistically, they are a fairly big attack on presumption of innocence. And I mean, look at Gladys Berejiklian. She got taken down by ICAC, and I cannot have it explained to me what she did wrong.
I don't understand it either. But her boyfriend was a scumbag, though.
Look,
But
she didn't break a law, and nobody's alleged that she's broken a law. Now, she was having a relationship with someone who might be, but they couldn't convict of being a bit shady.
yeah, he was. Oh, okay,
That's
maybe not criminally, but morally, the guy was a bit shady. And frankly,
well,
I'm glad she went down. No, no, Don Perrottet was orders of magnitude better than Glarus, but Berejiklian.
yeah, sure, but here's what I'm here to say. What was the reason? Like, accepted that Don Perrottet may have been a better premier, but there's a way to deal with that, which is have a leadership spill, have the fight out, and win leadership. I, I I don't know if ICAC's ever taken down a Labor premier.
No,
Has
I
it?
don't. I don't think so.
I can't recall one.
Your point on these corruption commissions is well taken. I just want to return to the issue of unions, though, because that ties
Oh
into
no,
my.
no, no, no. So the corruption thing though is important. So in IBAC, once it came out that the red shirts, so they referred the branch stacking on a ridiculously narrow remit, and for whatever reason, I know that IBAC has the power to do its own remit investigations, but it stuck strictly to Adam Samurek's branch of the Labor Party and stayed away from Daniel Andrews' branch of the Labor Party, even though in the executive report, this is so the executive summary is, I think, 3 pages. In it, it says, we're absolutely certain that Daniel Andrews was doing the exact same thing, and here's why we're going to ignore that and why Adam Samurek is a son of a bitch.
No,
Um,
it's a big club and we're
and
not in it, Stu.
what?
It's a big club and we're not in it.
No,
Neither is Adam
but
Samurek.
yeah, but when that report came out that put a bit of stink on him, and then he immediately cut funding to IBAC. And Robin, I cannot remember his name. It's Redlick, Commissioner Redlick. On the way out the door, he said corruption is a major problem in this state.
Oh, yeah.
And Daniel Andrews then he got rid of the one who said that, put in a stooge, and lowered the budget again. It's that blatant. It is that blatant. Like
Yeah.
they're on the cusp of saying something that I can't say. Well, I've referred that to Victorian Police cut their funding, those fuckers. So he knows how to cut a budget. He just,
he puts the
he
end in
doesn't want
cut.
to cut rorts.
No, so all of that is a bit over my head because I'm not that well versed in Victorian politics. Although I was following along, and it's very interesting, and
Well, the
undoubtedly
reason that I
there's.
think it's valid here is that Daniel Andrews, Elbow's going with Daniel Andrews to advise him.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're tight those two. But I wanted to. I just one thing you said set me off on a tangent in my mind about I have a grand theory of the Liberal Party, and this ties into the unions because there's this shibboleth amongst the Liberal Party at the moment. All of them, like Joe Hockey, Tony Abbott, all of them is like, oh, tariffs are the worst thing ever. Tariffs is just sheer madness. Why would Trump do this? It's unbelievable. Now, this anti-tariff hysteria was never a Menzies policy. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Menzies pursued a
Oh,
policy
no.
of
Yeah, no, no, no.
McEwenism. And so he had high tariffs on manufacturing to protect the manufacturing, and he had high tariffs on resource on primary produce as well. So Menzies pursued a very high tariff agenda, the father of the Liberal Party. And my theory is that during the neoliberalization era of the 80s, the Liberal Party in part supported Paul Keating's removal of protectionism to
Well,
get
I
the
mean,
to
that
get
happened
to
at a very hysterical, weird time.
yeah, but the
Yeah.
reason why, part of the reason why I'm sure of it is because they wanted to attack the unions because their premise was less protection equals less manufacturing industry equals less blue collar workers equals less trade union influence, less unionist influence in politics, less money going to the Labour Party, and we're the party of the intelligentsia. We're the doctors' wives. We're the party of big business. We're gonna become much stronger in a free trade world. Well, it didn't happen like that, did it? And in
No,
fact,
not at all.
in fact, the left hijacked all of those intelligentsia classes. Like a lot of doctors, I'd say the majority of the doctors our age are, very left wing, and a lot of lawyers as well. A lot of these like professions which you usually used to reliably vote for Liberal, now they don't anymore. And then to deal with the trade union issue, the Labor government just set up superannuation to take care of the trade unions, and so we
Well,
lost.
yeah, and so this is like, it, in fairness, um, you've got to give the devil his due. Like Paul Keating was playing the long game with superannuation. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh yeah, and it
Um,
worked. He
yeah.
completely
Oh,
worked.
what a treat. The unions have got more money than they know what to do with,
More
and they
money
give
than
it to the
ever.
Labour Party.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was able to pump out propaganda which embarrasses the Liberal Party, and boomers, especially the young and the old, are susceptible to propaganda. They don't have the
What
mental
I would say
capacity to
though,
steel their minds.
what I would say though is there's complexity in the tariff situation. So I would quietly suggest that by the 1970s, protectionism had rendered our industries absolutely dysfunctional. Like wool is a prime example of that. So we were paying them to grow wool that nobody wanted to buy, so the government would buy it at a set price. Now, I have no problem with the idea of keeping wool going. Like if the industry was really in danger of dying out altogether, but I'm extremely dubious that the industry would ever die out altogether. The trouble is that it was a backbone, and this is I mean, I'm preaching to the converted here, but like allocation of capital by government almost always ends in propping up industries that need to have a major shakeup, and the only way that that can happen is by allowing big lumbering failed giants to fall. Um,
Yeah, true,
and I
but there's
think
something to be said
a
about having a
second point with
manufacturing.
tariffs, though, just let me flesh this out quickly, is from our global perspective, unless we're on the inside of the trading bloc, tariffs are generally speaking not going to be great for Australia. So Menzies was in the post empire mindset, and Britain was as powerful as it was until about, call it 1941, um, because of internal empire trade. So it had set up its global trading bloc, and it was economically pretty unassailable. So if we were part, and so that worked well for us while we were part of the empire, but you wouldn't want to be on the outside of the empire. That would be fucked as a middle power. Um, so from a tariffs point of view, I'm I come down on, I think they're necessary because we're entering into the re-emergence of great power rivalry, and the idea of being as economically entangled with China when they are clearly a geopolitical rival, they're on the other side of a fence, is absolute madness. And I think the Ukraine situation demonstrates that very neatly.
100%.
Like,
Future
yeah,
history
the
books.
Germans have given more money to Russia than to Ukraine.
Yeah, so is Australia.
Yeah, by
But
buying fucking Russian oil.
but
Like,
but future
that just was not a problem during the Cold War.
future history books will condemn us for outsourcing all of our production capacity to a
I
country of
agree.
literal
Yeah, completely.
slaves, a communist
Yeah.
dictatorship with over
Hmm.
1 billion literal slaves. Like history will not be kind to us for that. Sorry, we've done
No,
good.
especially the moronic idea that that flooding a dictatorship with money would lead to it liberalizing just cause. Like that's the more I think about that idea, like I remember in the mid 2000s being like, oh yeah, like yes, there's not really any sign whatsoever of China liberalizing. But yeah, yeah, like I suppose if they get a middle class, the middle class is going to want to talk about it. But I saw in Australia during COVID, the exact opposite is true. The middle class, so long as they remain relatively materially comfortable, will give up liberty without thinking about it at all, to be
Mm,
honest.
yeah.
In fact, in some cases, they'll enthusiastically cheer it on.
No, the
Like,
idea of liberty will be offensive to them because it might be a
yeah,
threat to
it might
their
threaten the material well-being.
comfort. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think, and China has put itself into a bit of a bind because I don't know what their true debt ratio is, but I've heard it's something close to 400% of GDP. I know that their real estate market is just an absolute paper tiger. It's absolutely hollow. So the Chinese government's compact with the people is probably on the verge, closer than we most people think, of breaking down. Because increasing material wealth is not something they can deliver forever via debt. Um, and that's a problem that's going to happen. That's the problem being realized in the United States as well. But China is way further down that road. And the Chinese people are going to have much more legitimate gripes to start fighting over with the government than Americans do with their government. But in terms of the tariffs, I think, um, yeah, I think from our perspective, if we can get inside the US trading bloc and whatever we have to pay to get inside that bloc would probably be worthwhile, I'd view this period as roughly analogous to getting inside the trading bloc in about 1812. So get inside Pax Americana, take two, and stay inside the empire. And this time the empire is going to be theoretically a bit more correctly balanced towards terms of trade with obvious geopolitical rivals. That's what I think. That's where I think this is going. And I think, like, I heard stories of woe about the stock market last week, but it seems to have all kind of balanced out. You know what I mean? Like, I think, yeah, there is going to be value lost in um, reestablishing domestic essential trades, but um, it's something that we've got to do. I mean, but then, yeah, I mean, like you look at that steel plant that they bailed out. That's a classic example of the government should not be in the business of allocating capital. They bankrupted it by pursuing idiotic green steel. And now they're talking about how they've got the workers' backs. But the workers are now, they're doing the Keynesian digging the hole, filling the hole back in. They're like, yes, they haven't lost their jobs, but that's a very expensive form of the dole because they ain't producing steel at a steel mill. You know what I mean? Which is strikes me as a problem.
Yeah, I
So
I
we end
am
up,
I'm low key terrified that Labor will scramble back into a minority government in the next election if the latest
I
polls. Because they
yeah,
just
it's a
do
worrying
not
me.
they do not have a clue on how to run an economy. And
No, I do not.
look, the Liberals aren't great at running an economy, not in my opinion at all. And the COVID JobKeeper fiasco is an example of that. But good Lord, they are 10 times better at it than Labor, who are actively destructive to the entire fabric of the economy from the top to the bottom. They are just, ripping it apart. Three
Oh,
more years of that'll be so damaging.
it's so bad, man. And like I'm hearing rumblings again. Like I saw the Sydney Morning Herald was saying we'd save $60 billion by having fixed 4-year terms. And I'm like, never in 10 million years would I vote to amend the Constitution to give these idiots another year.
Yeah, no way. No,
No, 3 years is already too long.
you got to face accountability. You're not dodging it.
Yeah,
No fucking way.
not a chance. If you were to pay me $1 million to vote yes on changing it to 4-year terms, I'd still vote no. Well, because I mean, they're going to tax that. Give them, yeah,
Oh,
I
the Liberal
absolutely
Party's
not.
the
Never.
Liberal Party's worried. On the weekend, I went to Lane Cove. Just
Mm,
I was on my way actually somewhere. We stopped for lunch at a shopping centre in Lane Cove, and that is in the electorate of Bennelong. Actually, it used to be in the electorate of North Sydney, but North
mm,
Sydney got abolished and it got redistributed into three different electorates: Wirringa, Bradfield, and Bennelong. And so Bennelong
mm.
is the most marginal sort of seat. I think in our first episode of Dreadnought News, I predicted that would be the first seat to be called as flipped. But I was
Yeah.
speaking to the father of the candidate there, and he was just sounding super worried, and he was like, "Oh, I don't think we've got to get two. We got to get 2% better than last time." And mind you, the Labor candidate there, Jerome Laxall, has been a complete clown. Like he's just been in all sorts of strife. And for some reason, the Liberal Party is just not confident at all. So I don't
Look,
know.
I think it's very, very important to keep in mind that Dutton, if Dutton wins government from opposition after the first term, it will be the first time in almost 100 years that has happened. So, like, Abbott came quite close at the end of Rudd's first term, but that was viewed as a major deal, right? Like he said, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in business. Um, but look, I will share with you. I I would rather 3 more years of Labor than a Labor teal green minority
Really,
government.
you're not an accelerationist?
That would be just the damage.
There's one
I'm
school of
not.
thought that it would be so bad that it would make, people would have no choice but to vote for the opposition if that was the
Oh
case.
yeah, yeah, but I mean,
Whereas
the
three
trouble
more
is
years of
though,
Albo, if Labor gets a minority and just muddles on as usual and then rolls out the propaganda, we might get a three-term Labor government, which would be
yeah, I'm 110% confident that won't happen. Um, what might happen though, which would be worse, like so if Dutton forces them into minority government, then I think Dutton will be Prime Minister of Australia either way. If he wins this time or if he forces them to minority government, um, then at the end of the next 3-year cycle, he will be Prime Minister. And that's just because there'll be no basis to challenge him from within the Liberal Party. What what would be a bad outcome from a Labor outright victory is there probably will be a leadership spill, and that will be the the wet lettuce squib Turnbull wing of the party will say, "Look, see, we tried to do quasi-Trumpism and it doesn't work in Australia." Um,
no. Well, Dutton has been at pains to bend himself over backwards and be a moderate. So
yeah, and I look to be honest, that probably doesn't. It's probably part of why it's not working.
I agree.
Like,
You got to be authentic, and
yeah.
yeah, and so the lesson from the 2019 election was that small target opposition is the only way to go. If you go out with
Mm.
Bill Shorten with like a bold platform, the you know you won't win. I don't agree with that consensus. I think, yeah, if you go to the election with a shit platform, which none of the voters want, yeah, you're not going to win, you know.
Yeah,
But if you go to the voters with a platform that everyone wants, like cheap energy, reduced immigration so that we can get houses. Like there's a whole litany of policies they could rack off, which would be super popular, but they haven't done it. Like Bill,
yeah.
what's Dutton did come out originally with a sort of a reduction in immigration, but he's since walked that back. And I don't know what happened, whether Harry Triggerboff had a word with him or something, or he just
Yeah,
doesn't
look,
want to
I
appear
think
like a nasty right winger against the immigrants. Like maybe he's like wants to target those immigrant seats in Western Sydney. I don't know. I think it's dumb though. I think you got to come out and with a popular policy which people are clamoring for. I don't know why you wouldn't do that.
I really think that if you were to come out and say we commit to um, annual net immigration of less than 50,000 a year, that alone is going to get you most of the way there.
You don't even have to go that low. Even 80,000, and that's like a reduction. At the
Oh,
moment, it's running at
but
500k a year. It's running at like
well,
400,
personally, I think it does
500k.
kind of have to be that low because I don't see any way for housing to catch up.
Anything under 100,000 is going to be at least five times better than what it is at the moment.
Well, yes, that's fair, but the point that I'm getting at is if you were to commit to an achievable low number, that is a done deal right there.
That wins a
And
lot of votes.
I think if you were to also to commit to taking planning off local councils, uh, because local councils are creatures of statute, they don't have to exist. So there's no reason for them to be doing planning. You've got a strong constitutional right to deal with that. So that you can, because like the planning stuff is ridiculous. Like, so for example, we had to have our front door, the door handle fixed. So the second you touch the door handle, now it's got to be up to code. And the code requires that you have a door handle that you can exit the house without a key. Now, that's not a terrible idea, but why legislate it? You know what I mean? Like, why? This is just like it's that level of micromanagement in housing, in building housing. It just doesn't need to be done.
That's ridiculous.
And
Yeah.
and we've gotten like I can't remember where I read it, but we've gotten something ridiculous, like 300% less efficient at building houses. And it's because there's 10 million fucking planning layers over everything. You know, like housing has to be painted this shade of green, and it has to have this level of insulation, and it has to have this level of gas, and it's got to have this level of. It's just preposterous. And so then when you add in like everything from the lumber to build the framing to the bricks is like quadrupled in price. You can't have people like I was talking to a friend in Queensland who was trying to build, and he said we would love to, but good luck finding a builder who'll stay afloat long enough to actually build your house. Like it's almost impossible. They go bankrupt like this. So, um, and my experience so far is that in Queensland there's like five or six non-tier one players who can actually do anything. And they're not like Stockland, so they're not, multi-billion dollar enterprises, but they're big companies still. So everyone less than that, they don't have the cash reserves to ride out the bumps. So people just go bankrupt. And we see it quite a lot. We see, I've seen in the last 6 months, I've seen at least four builders go bankrupt and the job's on hold. And yeah. So, but can you imagine if you're just a family looking to build your forever home, as they like to say? What's much worse than not starting at all is getting halfway through, having your builder go tits up. Now you've got a half-built house and you've somehow you've committed most of that, like you've loaned the money, so the interest is accruing. You've got to somehow put the project on hold until you can find another builder and pray that they don't go bankrupt to get you to the other end. So most people are doing the logical thing and not starting in the first place because not starting is a much better position than getting halfway through in house building. Getting halfway through, you're fucked, totally fucked if you get stuck there. Um, but but that's the reality, and imagine what that's doing to our ability to build houses. It's people aren't willing to take the risk, and government just is insisting on putting more and more and more and more and more difficulty in building a house, making the risk bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm.
Yeah. So if you were to do something about immigration and then do something, I mean, the Liberal Party, the Labor Party is actually saying, was it? I saw on Q&A. Well, he's not the Labor Party, to be fair. Who is he? He's that commentator. He was on Channel 10 Breakfast or something like that. He is big in the Labor Party. Joe Hilbrand was saying, "Oh, well, we don't have the skills to build houses in Australia, so we need to bring immigrants in to build it." No, Joe, you're wrong. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, we have to, what? No.
Yeah, we know how to build houses. We just can't build
Yeah, we can
as
build
many of
houses
them
just fine, mate.
as is
One of
required.
the main reasons you can't get your hands on a tradie is that state governments are pouring money hand over fist into infrastructure projects and
Which is also
hoovering it
required.
up.
Yeah, which is also required
Yeah,
because of the massive population growth.
yeah.
We'll
So,
slow down a
yeah,
bit. But yeah,
yeah, like
seems
that.
like
Like, look, I mean, that capital misallocation in Victoria, it's impossible to find trades down here because they've all been hoovered up by the big build. And you can't blame the tradespeople for that. Like, why would you turn down secure work, like 6 years at least, at 200,000 a year plus? Why would you turn that down when a builder could go under and you're probably only going to be earning, like you might crack 100,000 under typical wages. But it's so insane, Doggo, that the land tax is what's funding the the big build, which is taking builders away from building houses into the infrastructure. So, like, you can see like, we've managed to create a perfect negative feedback loop storm. So, like, it's predicated on taxing a market, which the infrastructure project is forcing to dry up. So, like, because of the way taxation works, the states can only tax as long as there's a liquid market. The houses have to be moving on the property because they tax via stamp duty. Um, so if it's not on the market, and then yeah, you look at property developers, they're all saying, well, we don't want to sell the thing because we don't want to take the land and then sell the land because we get smashed with stamp duty. So
100%.
they're
Stu, we're going to
causing a
get
seize
bounced.
up.
We're
Yeah,
going to get
okay.
bounced. But yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
right.
that discussion. Let's continue it next
Yeah,
next week.
yeah, yeah. All right.
All right.
Talk
Catch you
soon.
later.